Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country over the past week or so. And as usual, Guyana is a very dynamic place, and we always have a number of important issues to discuss. As usual, I want to begin by welcoming all of you starting on the west coast of Berbice. I want to welcome you, those of you joining us on television in Region 5 and Region 6 on the Quarantine Coast, New Amsterdam, East Berbice, Mahaika to Rosignol. Welcome on television. I also want to welcome those who are joining us on Freedom Radio from Rob Street, Georgetown. Welcome. And I also want to welcome, most importantly, our largest set of viewers, those who are joining us on Facebook Live, right across the length and breadth of Guyana, as well as the Caribbean, Europe, North America, and further afield. Welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News. I want to invite you, as I normally do, to share this program. Press that share button on your Facebook account or on your Facebook page so that your friends and those who are following you can join us in tonight's discussion. Please press that share button, share this program far and wide so that we can have the largest possible audience joining us in our discussion tonight. I want to begin by reminding you that COVID-19 pandemic is still with us and continues to wreak havoc across the world, as well as in Guyana. However, we have to proceed and we have to continue. We have to survive this. We have to overcome it. And I want to inform you that the Minister of Health, Dr. Frank Anthony, my colleague, has announced that Pfizer vaccine are now available to the general public. So Pfizer vaccines are now available to the general public. So those of you who are awaiting Pfizer vaccines, they are here and they are now available. In the news, the work of the Public Accounts Committee is occupying some attention. And tonight, I thought that I will discuss the role of the committee system in the National Assembly, the role of the National Assembly itself in our constitutional democracy, and the role of the Public Accounts Committee as well. Because it's important that we understand the role of our Parliament in our constitutional structure, what are the responsibilities of parliamentarians, what are the main functions of Parliament, and how the constituent elements of Parliament are supposed to function. So, a good place to begin is by explaining that in our constitutional construct, governmental or state power devolves into three main organs. I know that you know this: the judiciary, the parliament, and the executive. And the Constitution regulates how these three main organs of government operate, what their functional responsibilities are, what their powers are, and what their duties are. The Constitution also says that as far as possible, they may not trespass upon the province of each other, meaning that they shall not trespass upon the functional responsibility of the other, so that what functions are assigned by the Constitution to the judiciary must be performed by the judiciary. The functions to be performed by the National Assembly or the Parliament must be performed by the National Assembly. And the function assigned to the executive must be performed by the executive. It is the keeping of these powers separate and apart from each other is what is popularly called by constitutionalists as the doctrine of separation of powers. And when one contravenes or abrogate that doctrine, one is said to act unlawfully, illegally, unconstitutionally. So, the National Assembly that we want to focus on and the Parliament has some main functions. First of all, the main function of Parliament is lawmaking. It is the body in the country responsible for the enactment of the law. The judiciary interprets the law and applies the law. The executive enforces the law. So that's their legal functions. The Parliament also is responsible for providing the forum for government policies to be discussed and approved by the elected representatives of that Parliament. So when the Parliament approves a particular principle or policy, it means that the country has approved that policy because the majority of the persons elected in that Parliament reflects the will of the majority of the people. And that's called a majoritarian principle. And in our democracy and in the democracy of the modern world, the majoritarian principle prevails. So when you have a majority in the National Assembly and you pass a policy in that assembly, it is said to be the policy of the country. Never mind there are persons within the National Assembly who may not have supported that policy. Because of the majoritarian principle, which is recognized as the foundation of democracy, that policy is said to be the country's policy. So, Parliament does policy making. The other important function of Parliament is its oversight function. Its oversight function. Parliament is intended to oversight the conduct of the judiciary as well as the executive, or rather more so the executive. And the judiciary is empowered to oversight Parliament and the executive. So these bodies have an oversight responsibility over each other. They are said to be checks and balances against each other. And once they function with coexistent independence and they function competently and diligently, that society in which these organs operate is said to be a democratic society. So you have to have these organs oversighting each other and watchdogging each other. And that, once they do that, and they are able to effectively curtail excesses committed by one or the other in the discharge of their respective functions, then that is how a democracy is said to operate. So, one of the functions of Parliament is to oversight. Now, oversight manifests itself in two ways. You have fiscal or financial oversight, as well as oversight over performance and policies. So, Parliament exercises its fiscal oversight in two main ways. One, through the Committee of Supply, and two, through the Public Accounts Committee. The Committee of Supply is that committee that sits to examine the budgetary proposals of the executive at budget time, or when the national estimates and expenditures of the country is being presented. There the entire assembly goes into what is called a Committee of Supply, and examines the proposed spending of the government line by line and interrogates the government or the executive in relation to each budgetary proposal. And the executive is expected to partake in that interrogation and provide all the answers that are being sought in relation to the expenditure of public funds. Why? Because these funds come from taxpayers' dollars, or they come from loans, and these loans are to be paid back by taxpayers. So either way, it is public monies, and that process is done in the public's interest, and that is why it is a public, that's why that place is called public building. But the public has a right to be there. Now we have live streaming and we have the internet broadcasting it right across the world. That is how it should be. So the ordinary man, ordinary woman can sit wherever he or she is and follow how his or her tax dollar is being spent and how it is being accounted for in the National Assembly. And they can also see their political representatives or their elected representatives at work. That happens when National Assembly is considering budgets or supplementary financial requests for capital or current expenditures. Now, the other important oversight function that is performed by the Parliament is performed by the Public Accounts Committee. And here is where I want to spend some time so that you understand what is the role and function of the Public Accounts Committee. Now, the Public Accounts Committee is one of the several committees in the National Assembly called standing committees. In fact, the Public Accounts Committee is provided for by the Constitution of our country. So important it is. Now, there are other committees, let me explain to you. So they have an Economic Services Committee. That is a committee that sits to examine the economic functions of government. Then there is a Social Service Committee. That committee exists to examine the social services of the government. Then there is a Natural Resources Committee. That committee sits to examine the management of the natural resources of the country. Then there is a Foreign Relations Committee that examines our foreign relations. These committees are all chaired by the opposition. Why? Because their purpose is to oversight executive functions. These committees are very powerful. These committees are all, they're chaired by opposition, they're not constituted wholly by opposition. They are chaired by opposition. Some of them, the chair rotates, but they are principally chaired by the opposition. The Public Accounts Committee is always chaired by the opposition. I'll get back to that just now. But these committees are expected and are empowered to examine government's conduct in the various spheres of activities and endeavors, depending upon the nature of the committee, and to interrogate ministers, public officers, technical personnel within the government for them to account and explain what policies they are pursuing, how much the people of Guyana are benefiting from those policies, what are the cost implications, and how this will augment the developmental agenda of the country. Those general issues are what these committees are empowered to interrogate. When they find misbehavior, these committees, when they find wrongdoings, they have a power to call in the police or the relevant law enforcement agencies and recommend investigative actions and criminal charges where necessary. All these committees and these systems that we are speaking about here were all created under the People's Progressive Party administration from 1992 progressively up to now. And I want to make that point. They were all created during this period because prior to 1992, we had a dictatorship where the PNC controlled the parliament and none of the committees were functioning. I don't think they even had a committee. Now let's go back to the Public Accounts Committee. The main role and function of the Public Accounts Committee is to look, examine, scrutinize, analyze, and police the Auditor General's report and to question and investigate the shortcomings identified, deficiencies identified, queries identified by the Auditor General in that report. Remember, the Auditor General is an independent office just like the judiciary. And this Auditor General principal function is to audit the public accounts of Guyana. So all the expenditure of public funds by the various governmental agencies and ministries at the end of the year are to be audited by the Auditor General. So the Auditor General looks at the budget, sees how much money you got and how you spend it. And at the end of the day, he audits that accounts or those accounts and he presents a report. This report is not given to the government. This report is handed to the Speaker of the National Assembly. And the Speaker lays it, make sure that everyone has a copy, every member of the National Assembly has a copy, and then it is transmitted to the Public Accounts Committee for the Public Accounts Committee to now interrogate that report, investigate that report, scrutinize that report, and to investigate the expenditure of funds and look at the queries and the deficiencies that the report identifies. And that is an important oversight fiscal function of the National Assembly. To make that to make that committee effective, the opposition chairs it. And that is why when we objected to Member of Parliament Patterson chairing it, not for one moment did we ever suggest that a member of our side chairs it, because we know that it is to be chaired by an opposition member. Patterson was disqualified for reasons which I don't need to reiterate here. And Figuera, we supported Figuera as a substitute. Now, the work of the Public Accounts Committee is significant work if one wants to pursue the principles of transparency and accountability in public life and in the public accounting architecture of this country. And these are concepts and precepts that we are all committed to in Guyana, irrespective of whether you're a member of civil society, whether you're a member of whichever political party. You are committed to see transparent government. You are committed to ensure that there is accountability for the expenditure of public funds. Well, one of the instrumentality created by the Constitution and the democratic architecture of this country to ensure that that objective is pursued is the Public Accounts Committee. The work of that committee is therefore very, very important and very crucial for a democratic and transparent architecture to exist. It is for that reason that this work of this committee cannot be rushed. The work of this committee must be carefully done, must be done with circumspection, must be done with due diligence, and must be done with the requisite care. It cannot be something that is rushed. Now, the opposition, who are chairing the committee, wants the job of this committee to be rushed. Why? Because the committee is examining the 2016 budget, the year 2016. That is where the work of the committee currently is. Remember, it's reviewing, examining past years. So right now, they are examining Guyana's accounts, or the Auditor General report on Guyana's accounts for the year 2016. That was when the APNU, AFC were in government. And because they don't want that committee to do the type of clinical examination, the type of probing, the type of analysis, the type of scrutiny which is required, they are pushing and pushing for that work to be done in a quick and careless way. So they want multiple sittings of this committee to take place in 1 week. Well, we are not going to rush that. When we were in opposition, our current president was chairman. We had a statutory day, rather, of the week when the Public Accounts Committee met. And that has been the tradition in Guyana going back for decades. When we were in opposition, we complied. When we were in government, we complied as well. Now they are in government, they are in opposition, and their government is under scrutiny for the year 2016, and they want the Public Accounts Committee to sit multiple times per week so that they can rush through the work because they want to get to our year in government. Well, we are going to get to our year or our years in government. We are going to get there. You have 4 more years to traverse before you reach 2020. But we will not sit idly by and allow the work of this committee to become a rubber stamp, nor will we allow the work of this committee to be rushed. The work of this committee is fundamental to good governance. It's fundamental to transparent governance. It's fundamental to accountable governance. And that is the big hullabaloo that is currently ongoing in the Public Accounts Committee. That is what is going on. I know that a lot of people don't understand what this fight is about every week. You have the committee there. We have a majority in the committee. We are the government. The government always has a majority in the committee because we are the government. They have the chair. We have no difficulty with that. But committees make decisions by votes. Any committee. The National Assembly makes decision by votes. GCOM makes decision by votes. Any commission that is constituted by different members, they make decisions by votes. Here, the chairman is frustrating the voting process by not putting resolutions to a vote. So a member of the committee moves to resolve that after 1 day's work we must adjourn. They don't. The chairman of the committee refuses. And this is where the institutions will break down. And we know APNU, AFC, their political culture, their political strategy include and involve the breakdown of institutions. We saw that. We saw they trying to break down the whole government and the whole electoral structure for 5 months. That is their nature. And this is exactly what they are doing in the Public Accounts Committee because they don't want their years in government to be scrutinized and examined. And I am not hearing the champions of transparent governance and the champion of accountable governance saying anything here. Where is Transparency International and all these organizations who would normally champion the cause of transparency and accountability? Why are they not commenting? Why are they not commenting on the Public Accounts Committee in Guyana being railroaded and being affected in functioning effectively and effectually? But that is the double standards that take place in Guyana. And that is why we have to resist these attempts. So right now, the Public Accounts Committee, based upon the news reports I have seen, is examining the multi-billion-dollar settlement by virtue of one letter of the government with BK International in relation to Hagbosh. And let me remind you of the gory details of that transaction. When we were in government, as Attorney General, I sent several notices to the contractor, and the minister at the time sent several notices to the contractor, alerting him to breach and breaches of contract at the Hagbosh site. We drew to his attention that he had received over 75% of the money, some 15, 16 million US dollars out of 20 or 21 million US. But he has not completed a commensurate set of the work. In fact, he was lagging far behind in terms of contractual compliance. Because of his failure to respond positively to the various notices and to remedy his breach, as we are required to request of the contractor, the contract was terminated. The contract was terminated. We filed proceedings in the court. We filed proceedings in the court for breach of contract. This is the Hagbosh contract. We lost the government sometime around that same time. Instead of continuing the case which we had filed, instead of continuing the case, they, I believe, withdrew the case and settled by paying this errant contractor some 5.6 million US dollars, 5.6 million US dollars on the mere letter sent by an attorney at law. They lied in the parliament. They lied in the parliament when the question first arose. And they said that they got judgment against them. I searched the entire system. We couldn't find the case out of which judgment came. Judgment must be granted in a case. There was no case filed. But they passed it off as a judgment until I persevered. And I keep asking questions in the National Assembly until the truth finally came out that there was no case that was filed against them, that they simply settled on a threat to litigation by a lawyer for this contractor. And of course, in Guyana, nothing stays silent for a while. You begin to hear who got what sum of money. One minister yard was redone and rehabilitated with a Benar bill at the back. Another minister got X amount. I hear another minister who was part of the settlement and who had to make the settlement happen. When he realized that monies were sharing, he started calling a price. He was not part of the original conspiracy. But he demanded and he had to get another lump sum. It is those details. It is those details and the gory details of that transaction and transactions of that type that occurred in 2016 that they don't want the Public Accounts Committee to interrogate. You see, the Public Accounts Committee has the power, and we have to get these institutions to work. It's not everything must depend upon the courts and the police. There are many other checks and balances in the system provided for by law with a great plenitude of power invested in them. And these structures, these institutions, we have to make them work. And those of us who are in them, we have to exercise the powers. We have to exercise the powers that the law confers upon these institutions. So I thought that I would spend some time tonight so that our viewers understand the role of the Public Accounts Committee, so that you can understand the quarrel that is constantly taking place there. And also to understand why, because of the functional nature of that institution, Patterson could not have chaired it. That institution, at the appropriate time, will be required to interrogate Patterson himself. Minister Patterson will have to be interrogated because reports, audit reports from the Auditor General will come there with glaring infractions committed or allegedly committed by Minister Patterson. I am sure that they are there already. I am sure that they are there already. So we must understand how the system works. And some people feel that the opposition do not have power in our constitutional structure. That's a complete misnomer. It's a no-no. The opposition has a tremendous amount of power. But whether they are up to exercising it in a diligent way, whether they are able to competently use that power, is a completely different matter. And they are all bright people. I will never endeavor or attempt to try to explain to them what those powers and responsibilities are and how to use them. That's a matter for them. But trust me, our system, like all the other systems in the Commonwealth, there is great resemblance. A lot of people feel that the executive has all the powers in Guyana. That is not true. The executive in Guyana has a very similar compendium of powers, like our counterparts in the Caribbean and in the rest of the Commonwealth. All this system and style of governance was designed by our colonial masters in the United Kingdom. We have changed a little over the years in minor respects, but by and large, the system greatly resembles each other across the British Commonwealth. So the powers that you see being exercised in other jurisdictions in the world, they exist in Guyana. But you have to have an opposition that is aggressive and who is prepared to use those powers. We were in the opposition quite recently. I could remember the sessions with Bishop Ejil and Irfan, now president, in the Public Accounts Committee. Long, long hours, but we battled it out. We made public that which we could have made public. We interrogated that which we could have interrogated. I believe we invited police investigations where necessary. We did what we had to do. But these guys want an easy way out. They don't want to go in the committee and battle it out and defend their record. If they did that well, as they claim to be saying every time they speak, and their record is so pristine, then what is the problem? Show your record for scrutiny. Let the scrutiny begins. But no, they can't do that, and hence the resistance at the Public Accounts Committee. So I thought that I would explain that a little so that you have a little insight or a little more insight into how these committees function and how our constitutional structure operates. We have to keep educating each other because, that's how we can understand and hold our government accountable. It is in that context I want to say that I have observed the remarks of the Honorable Chancellor. Let me say up front about delays. The government of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana enjoys good relations with the judiciary. We are partnering with the judiciary on many important projects. I can cite the creation or the establishment of the virtual courts as one that we were able to do so quickly and so smoothly, and it is functioning well. And we are collaborating on a number of other initiatives. And we enjoy an independent and respectful relationship. However, it doesn't mean that we cannot offer criticism or commentary on each other. Every time the judiciary rules against the executive, it is a pronouncement that the executive has acted unlawfully. And that is how the system is. If the judiciary is not complying with a particular principle or a particular piece of legislation, it is also open for the executive to so comment. Once it is done respectfully, and once ulterior or immoral motives are not attributed, then the law permits such exchanges. So, if it is that the judiciary was responding to comments I made, then I have no difficulty with the explanation of, I welcome the explanation of the Honorable Chancellor of the Judiciary that there is a shortage of judges. The President has already said that upon his return, he will address the issue of the commissions, the constitutional commissions that are to be appointed, and he says how the opposition leader will be engaged in that regard, because the process of appointing persons to these tribunals require some involvement of the opposition. So, government will be moving to address that issue, but the failure to write decisions in a timely manner has been a problem that has been with us for a very, very long time. Members of the public are commenting. And so much so that we thought it fit to pass a law which require the rendering of decisions within a particular time frame. And it is non-compliance with that law to which I made reference. But I take it that this in a democracy is a healthy exchange, and I hope that it's not viewed in any manner as affecting the good relations between the two agencies and the constitutional modus vivendi which is required of the two agencies. I want to also comment and commend the government for delivering yet another campaign promise, which we renewed recently when we held our outreach in Essequibo. And this renewal came from His Excellency the President himself. We had promised that we will establish offices for the issuance of passports in Region 6 and in Region 2 to complement the ones existing in Georgetown and the one existing in Linden. And I am pleased to say that we have achieved those objectives. Work is being done in establishing a similar office in Region 9, and we will hear about that soon. And I am told Region 2 as well, Region 3 as well. So we are well on our way in delivering our promises as made in our manifesto. I want to keep reiterating that no matter how much busy we become, no matter how much projects come in the country, one thing that we will not depart from is the promises that we made in our manifesto to the electorate. That will continue to be the pole star by which we are guided, and we are absolutely committed in delivering these promises. And you will see, ever so often, I'll be harking back simply to remind that, look, we had promised this. You know, sometimes we forget the basics, we forget the elementary stuff, and we get carried away with the large investments, and we get carried away with the announcements of billions of barrels per day and the large 200 rooms hotels and the huge shore-based facilities. Sometimes we get carried away, but the basics we must always remain committed to, and that is we have a pact with the electorate. We entered an agreement with the people who voted for us, and we will stick to that agreement. So there are some exchanges between the local government ministry and the mayor and city council in relation to the disposal of properties. Now let me make it very, very clear. Public properties, state properties, government properties, properties that may be registered in the ownership of local democratic organs are all generically public properties owned by the people of our country. And they are all governed by the laws of this country, their disposal. State lands cannot be disposed of without the consent and approval of the president. Government land cannot be disposed of without the consent and approval of the president or someone delegated by the president. Local democratic organs cannot dispose of properties in their ownership without the authority or permission of the subject minister, meaning the Minister of Local Government. Any attempt to dispose of or divest properties from these agencies without the authorization of those whom I've identified will constitute criminal offenses. Criminal offenses. So I just thought that I will offer those few comments because I see this exchange in the press between the local government minister and the various local democratic organs. We have had many instances where NDCs have sold properties. We have had to go to court. Right now we are in court in quarantine, where a gentleman applied for and obtained prescriptive title for about 250 acres of state lands bordering the Atlantic. Bordering the Atlantic. The whole foreshore a person has transport for. And got it by prescriptive title when we have a law passed since 2010 that prohibits the grant of prescriptive title in relation to state lands. This person got it in 2018 when we were out of government. In 2018, this person was able to get certificate of title, for in excess of 200 acres of state land. When since 2010, we passed a law saying that it's impossible to get prescriptive title for public lands, government lands, or lands owned by a state corporation. Yet, these skullduggery are able to take place. And a judge grants it. A judge grants it. A commissioner of title. We now have to file proceedings. We have now filed proceedings to set aside on the ground that the title was issued illegally and in violation of the law, as well as fraudulently, because the person never occupied the land for the period of time that they claim that they occupied it. And in any event, it was unlawful and illegal for them to occupy the land. So let me see what else I want to comment on. We are quickly running out of time. Defaulting contractors. I see my colleague, Minister Mustafa, had the cause to remind defaulting contractors to ensure that they deliver their projects on time. I have firm instructions from the President and from the government, and it's our committed policy that when these default takes place, we have to act in a condign way. Court proceedings will result, liquidated and other damages will be imposed as permitted by the contract and law, and at some point in time, additional sanctions, such as blacklisting, will have to be resorted to. When these contractors breach these public contracts, not only are they defaulting on their contractual obligations, and they come back for more money because they claim that because of the time, prices of materials have gone up, prices of labor have gone up, so they want variations now. Not only that leads to an extraordinary hemorrhaging of public monies, carelessly and recklessly, but more importantly, the lives of people are affected tremendously, and the government's developmental program becomes stymied. And how are you to pay compensation for that? When you don't fail to deliver a road on time and someone lose their life because they can't get to the hospital on time, or you don't finish the road in time and people lose their crops if they intend to use that road to transport their produce. The damages that flow are incalculable, incalculable. And the entire developmental agenda of the country is held back. So I hope that contractors understand that it's not a question of mere breach of contract, where the government is not interested in taking anyone to court. We are not legal combatants. We have work to do, tremendous work to do. The government would be happy if we don't have to spend time and resources in litigation. But, contractors have to understand their responsibilities, that they owe not only to their contracting obligations, but that they owe to their country and their fellow citizens. I want to take this opportunity quickly to offer my deepest sympathies to the family in Berbice, Bloomfield, Quarantine Berbice, who have suffered that horrible tragedy where a mother and her baby died at the New Amsterdam hospital. I offer to that family my deepest condolences. I can't begin to think what that family is going through. I have read in the newspapers that an investigation has been launched, and hopefully it will be concluded soon. It is my hope that it is done properly and professionally, and when the findings are made, then I will offer my comments. I think it would be premature to comment at this point in time. But it is a horrible tragedy, and to that grieving family, I extend my deepest condolences. My operator is signaling to me that we are approaching program time, so I want to take this opportunity to extend to my brothers and sisters across Guyana, across the diaspora, and all my viewers, in particular my Hindu brothers and sisters. I want to extend to you Shubh Diwali greetings. We will be celebrating, at least in Guyana, Diwali on Thursday. As you know, it's a public holiday, and Diwali is an important national festival, though it owes its origin in Hinduism. It's a national festival now. It's a public holiday, and Hindus celebrate this auspicious occasion, and they celebrate the various sentiments associated with this great festival. It is said to be the triumph of good over evil. It is said to be the illumination of darkness with light. It is said to have great messages, all of which are relevant to our current existence. And I invite all of us to celebrate. Again, I must take this opportunity in reflecting on the national kaleidoscope of cultures and religion that we are fortunate to have in Guyana. There are people still fighting wars, bitter wars, in the name of religion, over religion. Horrible atrocities are taking place in Bangladesh and other parts of the world as I speak. Fortunately, we are a land of 6 people. We are a land of multiculturalism. We are a land of many religion. We are a land of disparate historical heritages, and we are able to coexist peacefully. And our Constitution guarantees those rights as freedoms, and fortunately, we are able to do so in peace and in harmony. So, Diwali greetings once again to all of you, and may you have a very joyous and peaceful Diwali. Please enjoy the rest of the week, and I'll see you next week. Shubh Diwali. Good evening. Thank you very much.